I'm Jerry Newton. As those who are going to be looking at this will, at this point, I hope, probably already know who I am and who you are. Um, Susan Reid, as the sister of Jerrie Mock, is sharing some stories of life and important lessons. We're talking about just some lessons as we look at the book that your sister had written about her travels as she went around the globe. Something that's not really in here, but we wanted to talk about a little bit, was how much work she had to do to get to the point of getting in that plane and getting started. The idea that her husband said, well, why don't you just go fly around the world, wasn't something she said, okay, and hopped in a plane and did she?
Not that easy.
It wasn't that easy.
No, it took nearly 2 years of planning. She had to go to Washington and visit all the embassies of the countries where she felt that she would be flying over or landing in.
And why was she doing that?
And she had to have permission so that she wouldn't be shot down.
So, again, the perspective that we have to remember, we're looking at this some 50 years later. At that point in time, there was no internet.
No.
You didn't simply pick up a phone or dial someone.
No, only commercial planes and military were flying across the ocean.
And the idea of having to go to Washington to go to an embassy is not a concept that we really think about now either, because we're used to being able to handle something electronically. That really didn't exist
No,
then.
that did not exist then.
So she had to personally go to each embassy, and what was she doing?
Well, talking with the ambassadors, explaining what her plans were, and that she wanted to either fly over or land in these countries.
Because they were controlling airspace.
That's right.
And she actually was told by a number of places, no, I like what you're doing, but you're not going to come over our airspace,
Right.
wasn't she?
Yes.
Okay. The idea then of planning it was more than just getting people's permissions and telling them what they were going to do. She also had to figure out where she was going. So talking about this, she had to do more than just get permission from the embassies. What else was she doing to prepare for this?
She got some good advice from some Air Force people who were very helpful. And she also had to figure what she should wear so that she would look appropriate as an American woman landing in these countries. Because in many of these places, women could not wear slacks. And when she landed in Saudi Arabia, that was really an exciting thing, because they were expecting her to land there, and she got out of the plane and they could see from her skirt that she certainly was a woman, but they kept they'd talk to her and then they'd look at the plane, talk to her and look at the plane. She realized they were waiting for the pilot. Because
so in Saudi Arabia, they did not expect...
No, women were not allowed to even drive a car in Saudi Arabia, even the American wives, and under the penalty of her husband being put in jail. So it was important that she looked like a lady, but then finally one of the men went over and looked in the plane and could see that there was only one seat. Other than that, it was all fuel tank. She really flew a fuel tank with wings.
Right. So in her preparing and planning, she had to actually know the cultures that she was going into. Yes. So that she wasn't going to be offensive to them, but then she also had to make a decision as to how she was going to be able to handle that.
Right.
So even if it may not meet their culture completely, she had made preparations and came up with a plan that was going to work so she could at least enter into their place and then continue on with her travels.
That's right.
It's an interesting line of thought right there, Susan.
Well, and another part of the planning, she had to have an AA advisor at each of these places who would be expecting her, who would literally lie on the ground, look up and say, she flew over me at this point, at this time, in order to make it an official record.
Because without that, they weren't going to have the independent verification of the group that was going to sanction and approve this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yes.
Well, thank you.